Hey ratbags, it's Jade taking a look today at Dawn of Defiance, a Greek survival game. I showed off a trailer for this a few months ago, kind of come out of nowhere, and I'm a little bit worried it hasn't really gained enough momentum. But it does look really cool and I want to get behind it. Certainly a co-op focused survival game set in ancient Greece, fighting mythological creatures, sounds pretty cool. They've been getting ready for this release with a bunch of info and a countdown now. Steam Early Access, Epic Game Store, but no mention of console just yet. It's going to be $20 to buy, although it's going to have a 25% discount, and I guess let's start going over it. Let's rattle off what you need to know, and then we'll give you thoughts and opinions at the end. Let's go. At launch, you'll be able to join your friend's world and play together, but no dedicated servers. But they are going to add the ability to have your own dedicated servers, which will be able to have more players, but you may experience more technical issues. In fact, you can have more than 4 people join you on your world, but again, it may result in performance issues. They've got controller support partially, but it does look like it will need a bit more work as they need a virtual keyboard, so I'm guessing the Steam Deck support might be a bit of a way off. No plans for VR, and modders, you might be happy later. And they are adding pseudo game modes that you'll be able to mess around with at launch a little bit, as well as some cheat console commands that you can use if you just want to do a lot of building. So that's pretty much the technical side of stuff. What about the actual game itself? It's going to have one major biome across 2 islands, including a section that will be locked at launch. It will have a bunch of sub-biomes with different resources, lots of different enemies, and more environmental hazards. Big focus of Dawn of Defiance is completing these shrines or deity shrines, where effectively this is how you get some of the new powers. To do so, you complete things called labours, and it looks like they're going to have 8 of the 12 ready to go for launch, with another 4 coming with the locked biome completed. It's going to have typical wildlife that you'll have to worry about, like wolves and boars, but it'll also have 9 different enemy types or variants on top of that. They're going to have the first tier of armour, tools and structures, most of the crafting facilities, but some won't be able to be upgraded until later. Inventory system of course, gear slots, equipment hotbar and chests, and guideposts showing your progression with some minimal narrative. Also going to be having some minor challenges and puzzles to get some of the recipes and upgrades needed. So it is a survival light game. Technically you won't die if you don't eat, but you will need to eat to pretty much give yourself some buffs and bonuses. And good news for players worried that they're going to have to contend with the heat and cold. It will be a factor, getting wet will also, but it's not going to kill you. So despite it being set in ancient Greece, you won't be fighting against the gods. This isn't God of War. Instead, you will be fighting deities and demigods, the minor ones. Sort of like rock golem style enemies, as well as obviously Medusa. Other monsters and maybe creatures you expect, they may be kind of sprinkled in during early access, as they want to make sure they're polished rather than just chuck them all front end. It isn't a narrative focused game. There could be a couple NPCs giving some quests, but not really a massive focus. And there won't be any character customization at launch. It does look like they're only going to have one character model, but that is something they're going to add and change as they go along. It is going to be a handmade crafted map, no procedural generation. These have good merits and bad merits. The good, obviously, that you can really fall in love with certain places, build your bases, and you know where everything is. The bad, it does get a bit repetitive once you've spent a good few amount of hours in it. So making sure they've got plenty to do and either events or stuff that's going on to keep the game fresh is going to be important. So the basically trials or the labours that you'll have to complete will give you special abilities. Now some sound a bit basic, like the ability to dash, but this will be something you'll have to earn. Likewise the glide mechanic, as well as hardfall, where you can pretty much jump from height and not take any damage. You won't be able to fly indefinitely, but you will be able to use it to traverse a little bit and help. They may run into a similar problem that happened with Enshrouded, that once you loot a crate, everyone gets that recipe when you discover something new. Given it's not a dedicated server game at launch, this might not be such a big deal. You kind of expect it, you jump in and out with your friends. You're maybe not going to be able to experience every part of the game. So while you're sad that you might miss out on unlocking or taking part fighting a boss, at least you will not be behind other players. You'll have access to whatever they've got. The game will get harder if you've got more players in additional spawns and more mechanics, but you can adjust and attune this in the settings. There's definitely some nice little details on the crafting benches here, showing the butcher's block and the hunting station. Some little nice supernatural fey elements with these wisps that we'll be able to maybe collect or grab a resource from at least. And interestingly, you'll be able to go ahead and build your bases underground, or at least build when you're gathering ambrosia, which seems to be a pretty important resource. And rejoice if you're sick of traversing large maps, they are going to have a fast travel system. Looks like specific points that you'll be able to get across the map a bit quicker, as glide will help you certainly, but it still is going to be a bit of a trek. Haven't seen any mention of anything like mounts or horses, maybe that's just a bit too far, but yeah, that could be cool in the future. In a recent dev blog, kind of unlisted, so it's a shame no one else can really see it on their actual YouTube page unless you're in their Discord, is a actual dev blog showing the building by their community manager Monday. And through it we get a glimpse at what you can expect with the different tiers. Nothing out of the ordinary really, everything you'd expect in a survival game, thatch, wood and stone, with some nice sort of terracotta roofs and obviously lots of pillars, given this is Greece and we're all going to be building pantheons. And very much looks like, yeah, you'll choose maybe crafting something and it will give you 20 if you've got the materials, and then you just simply hop and swap between your items. So no really fancy mechanics like placing one build down and then being able to scroll or change the size or what shape it is as you place. Some people prefer that, and that's worked out well in some games lately like Ark Remastered. Otherwise it's more traditional, a bit like Conan Exiles in terms of placement, where you just have to craft a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously you do have the benefit of the glide ability, you do see it get used here, and this was using cheats and commands to make this build a pop and obviously get it done, but it looks pretty good. Doesn't look like the tile sets are restricted, you know, where you can't blend tile sets together or pieces. That's really important for builders. So there's creative ways to cover maybe unsightly gaps because of maybe a lack of certain shapes and sizes. As always, that grind balance between getting enough materials to make something pretty cool, even if you're starting off in just thatch and wood, is going to be important, but yeah, something to earn and work your way towards eventually. The screenshots and the actual gameplay there does look stunning, obviously filmed or made, I'm guessing, with Unreal Engine 5, all that lumens shining through, and you get a nice sense of scale when you see other bases being completed, I think by some of the community members or friends and family that checked out some of the building. We've really only seen some unedited gameplay in terms of the building, maybe not enough of the actual core mechanics of the game. But to be fair, it does look like they're just a really small studio, maybe having to launch this sooner rather than later because of obviously money. Which doesn't make it a bad thing, but it does mean that sometimes they're not necessarily going to have to get the right polish or add maybe features until they get into early access a bit more. Like the trailer looks great, don't get me wrong, apart from a weird bum wiggle that characters have when they're running. I think it actually looks good. I think the creatures and enemies that you face look pretty interesting, and yeah, the base building is definitely a selling point right now. But as I alluded to at the start of the video, this has kind of come out of nowhere, and I want indie games to do well, but I'm just worried it's massively going under the radar. I hope they've got a substantial plan to maybe either get some big creators, pay them a lot of money to show it off and drum up some hype, or just get it out to as many key sites as possible rather than relying on just one. The armor sets look pretty cool. Definitely want to gear up myself, so I've got that nice big red mohawk. And the world seems to be filled with a good amount of atmosphere, intrigue and mystery. They've got a very light roadmap, kind of wishy-washy, but nothing too unexpected given that the state of the game and obviously the smallness of it. In the first few months, obviously assessing what players really want and feedback that they've been given, what to improve on, adding improved shrine labours, so making sure that it's engaging, earning them abilities and quality of life stuff. Then short-term goal, expand the crossroads, advance the narrative and add more buildables, and long-term, maybe even for 1.0, the character creator, more mythic enemies and mod support. It's a curse having a roadmap. If you put too much detail, people will beat you over the head just like they did with Valheim, even though they delivered most of what they said, just maybe a bit longer or in different order. And sometimes if your game's successful, you have to expand on what you've originally thought of just to keep the big amount of players that are now playing happy. But don't put enough details in the roadmap, and people might not necessarily want to pick up the game if they don't see enough of the goals they would expect. But obviously, let's give them some time. It's pretty normal for the roadmap not to even be shown until the release or just after. So in conclusion, this is a small little survival game, and you've got to measure that expectation about what they can do with a small team, but it does look pretty interesting to me. I'm really hoping it just comes out of nowhere. It's looking like to be a good month. There's not a huge amount going on in terms of survival. Nightingale's got maybe a big update coming, and Shroud has just had one of their updates go live. Apart from Ark and its Aberration DLC in September, it's at best probably month they could, and maybe getting a bit on the Olympic hype, since obviously the Olympic Games are still ongoing just now. So yeah, it looks good. I will obviously give you my unbiased opinion once I get hold of the game, but I'll be doing guides and gameplay to show it off, because from what I see here, it does look good enough for me to give some devoted time to. If you think the same, go and check the game out on Steam page, wishlist it, follow it, join a Discord, and I guess I'll see you on the 15th of August, maybe even sooner if I can get hold of a preview build. I'll see you ratbags later.